When working as a client liaison, you are the first person our clients interact with when visiting the tax centers. Your role is extremely valuable and will aid the community tax centers in assisting over 20,000 Austin area families. In this training session, I will be discussing the community tax centers processes as well as how to complete an intake interview. This training follows Form 13614C, the Intake Interview and Quality Review Sheet, which you can find on irs.gov. This training is extensive, so feel free to pause the video as needed. Each intake desk is set up with all items needed to conduct a thorough interview, all within arm's reach. The intake process begins when a client arrives. Greet the client and instruct them to sign in. The majority of our tax centers use a paper sign-in sheet, while others use a digital sign-in. Once the client has signed in, hand the client a clipboard. Each clipboard holds a laminated questionnaire as well as the IRS intake sheet. The questionnaire on the top of the clipboard should be read first. This questionnaire helps us identify clients that are possibly outside of our income eligibility or our scope of service. It's very important for clients to read this questionnaire carefully before proceeding with the rest of the paperwork. When you are ready to begin an intake interview, call the next client in line. Locate the next client in line by reading the fields in the Staff Only section of the sign-in sheet. In the gray Staff Only section, if the Interview in Progress box has been checked, the client is currently working with another client liaison. If the Ready for Tax Preparer box is checked, the client has completed their intake interview and is now waiting for an available tax preparer to assist them. In the Interview Notes section of the sign-in sheet, a client liaison may write notes indicating why the client will not be getting their tax prepared at this time, or that the client has stepped out and will return. Once you have called the next client to the intake desk, make sure to check the Interview in Progress box on the sign-in sheet. As a client liaison, your role includes completing or correcting any fields on the intake sheet. If a client has not completed the intake sheet, never send the client back to the waiting area. Instead, please help them complete the form. During the intake interview, greet the client, request a photo ID for the primary taxpayer and spouse, and the Social Security cards or ITIN letters for everyone that will be listed on the tax return. Also ask the client to place all tax documents on the table. It is important that the client show you any items that they think will be needed to prepare an accurate tax return. To learn more about acceptable forms of identification, please see our CTC resources page. Christina? Hi, how are you?
Good.
Good. Is this your first time with us?
It is.
Great, well, welcome. The community tax centers, we are part of the IRS program. It's called a VITA program. The way it's going to work today is I'm going to do an intake interview with you, just kind of making sure that you have all of your documents with you, make sure that you meet our requirements. So if you can give me the Social Security cards and IDs and all your paperwork for you and your whole household, great, thank you. Once we go through this process, what we're going to do is get you in line for a tax preparer. The tax preparer will call you, they'll put everything into the software, and then at that time we bring a second person in to just kind of double check all of the tax return. They're called a quality reviewer, and then you'll be ready to go on home. Any questions?
No, sounds good.
I see that you do have a few dependents, but I don't see their Social Security cards. Do you have those cards with you?
Oh, I do. I'll get them for you.
Great, thank you so much. Referring to the intake sheet, verify that there is a Social Security card or ITIN letter for each person on the tax return. Once you have the proper identification for each person on the tax return, you may excuse yourself from the client to make a photocopy of the IDs, Social Security cards, and ITIN letters. Once you have made copies of the identification documents, focus your attention on the tax documents. You must now verify that the client is within our income eligibility. As a reminder, a client qualifies for our tax services if they have earned an annual income of $55,000 or less for a family of 4. If there are more than 4 family members, we will add $5,000 to the income limit per additional family member. Looking at all the tax documents, at times it helps to group similar documents together. Now add up the income from each document to determine if the client qualifies for our service. If a client does not meet our income requirements, then we will need to refer them to other free tax preparation services. You can find these optional services on the CTC resources page. There are many times when a client won't have a printed version of a tax document. If this is the case, the intake area is equipped with printing capabilities, and you can assist the client in printing their tax documents prior to completing the intake interview. Once you have verified a client qualifies for our services, then we can begin reviewing the client's intake sheet. Watch the video titled Income Eligibility prior to watching the next scenario. So Chris, I'm seeing here that you have 2 W-2s and a 1099 miscellaneous. Were these the only jobs you held this year?
Yeah.
Great, so I'm gonna add up your income just to make sure that you qualify. Okay, Chris, so it looks like you do qualify. I'm gonna go ahead and continue with the interview.
Okay.
In the personal information section of the intake sheet, make sure all fields of the section have been filled out. If the client failed to answer a question, please use a red pen to review the question with the client and mark the answer on the intake sheet. When working with the intake sheet, the client liaison should always write in a red pen. This helps the tax preparer and the quality reviewer identify who corrected the question. Pay special attention that the following fields have been answered. The telephone number. Having a correct phone number allows the community tax centers to contact the client if there is ever an issue with their tax return. The identity protection PIN. This PIN number would have been sent to the client by the IRS. The tax return cannot be electronically filed without it. Filing a tax return without the protection PIN may delay a client's tax refund. So if the client has received a PIN, make sure to keep the letter with the other tax documents. The question asking, can anyone else claim the client as a dependent? The question is asking if the client has provided more than half of their own support. If this question is ever answered yes, it is very helpful for the client liaison to circle the answer with the red pen. So Chris, is this the best phone number for you?
Yes.
And you did not enter your zip code. What is your zip code?
Oh, sorry, it's 78745.
45, great. I noticed that you mentioned that yes, you received an identity protection PIN. I didn't notice the letter. Do you have the letter with you?
You know, I got a letter, but I think I forgot to bring it.
Okay, so your options right now is to go home and get the letter and return to the tax center, or you can have the preparation of your taxes done right now, but you will need to mail the tax return to the IRS. If we don't enter the PIN number, we just can't electronically file, but do expect a delay in your refund if you do mail it.
You know, I think I lost the letter, so let's mail the tax return.
Great. Part 2 of the intake sheet discusses marital status and household size. Make sure that the correct marital status is selected and all questions pertaining to the marital status are answered. Please note that an individual is considered married no matter the country in which they were married. For tax purposes, only a divorce or a legal separation will consider an individual to no longer be married. The table on this section is asking the client to list everyone who lived in the home last year. When conducting the intake interview, keep in mind that there may be people listed on the intake sheet that will not be claimed on the tax return. The community tax centers only need Social Security cards or ITIN letters for those who will be listed on the tax return. Feel free to scratch off any individuals in this table that will not be included in the tax return. During the interview, ensure that fields A through I have been completed, but do not complete fields that are shaded in gray. The gray fields will be completed by the tax preparer. Chris, you marked here that you're legally separated. What was the date of the separation? And just as a reminder that legal separation is when you separate through the court system.
Oh, okay, and then we just separated in 2016, but informally, not legally then.
Okay, so I'm going to change that answer to married. Did you get married in 2018?
No.
And did you live with your spouse at any time during 2018?
No.
Okay. I noticed down below, you did not give me the birth date to Benny. What is his birth date?
Oh, it's April 15th of 2015.
Great, and let's confirm Jasmine's. Is her birth date August 30th of 2014?
Mm-hmm.
Great. The final person you listed is actually listed as a roommate, Michael.
Oh no, I just support my kids. I don't pay any of Michael's bills. We just live together.
So since he's not on the tax return, I'm going to strike out his information since we don't need it.
Okay.
Great. Page 2 of the intake sheet is a series of questions that require a yes or no answer. Often our tax clients are not sure of the answer and check the unsure box. Your role as a client liaison will be to verify that all questions have been answered correctly and that any unsure answers are changed to either a yes or no answer. The first section is income. The income section is devoted to identifying the income received by the taxpayer. By reviewing this section with the client, it will help to determine the type of income received, decide if the income documents would make the tax return outside the scope of service, and verify that no income has been left out. Each income document is directly related to one of the questions on the intake sheet. Verify that the client has marked yes to the appropriate question. So for example, if a client received a W-2, then the question relating to the wages and salary should be answered with a yes. On the intake sheet, you will notice that the type of form needed is listed to the right of the question. For example, when a yes is answered to the question regarding unemployment compensation, you will notice that at the end of the question, it is requiring a Form 1099-G. For the client to receive services, the client must have brought the 1099-G with them to the tax center. Income can also be received for work done, but a tax document may never be given to the client. Examples of this would be tip income not reported on a W-2, self-employment income, payments received via cash or check, gambling and prizes. The self-employment and cash or check payment questions are directly related to each other. If the answer is yes to any of these questions, then please provide the client with a business expense worksheet located at the intake area. When a client has Social Security benefits as well as earned income, then please use the intake tool that calculates the taxable portion of the Social Security benefits to verify that the client remains within the income eligibility. At times, the taxable portion of the Social Security payments place the client over our $55,000 income eligibility. I see that you answered unsure to the question that asks about cash or check payments for work performed but not listed on a W-2 or 1099.
Oh yeah, I wasn't sure how to answer that question because they did pay me in checks, but the 1099 does reflect everything that I've earned with them.
Okay, so I'm going to change that answer to no. And because it's self-employment income, I am going to give you this worksheet to fill out. The top portion should be filled out while you're sitting with me, and everything down below will outline your expenses, and you can work on those while you're waiting for the tax preparer.
Okay.
The expenses section helps us determine how the client's tax bill can be reduced. You will notice that in this section, many of these questions do not list a tax form at the end of the question. It will be up to you to have an in-depth conversation about each question with a yes or unsure answer to ensure all required items are available while preparing the tax return. Although a tax document was not issued to the client may be required to bring extra documentation to report these expenses. If a client answers yes to any of the questions in the expense section, make sure to include the expense documents with the other tax documents. So you indicated that you had childcare expenses. I don't have that form. Do you have that with you?
Well, I have the information in my email. Will that work?
It will. Let's head on over to the laptop and we'll get that printed out before you're ready for the tax preparer.
Okay.
Moving on to the life events section, it is a good idea to ask a few of these questions to the client, even if they answered the question with a no. Sometimes, by asking these questions again to the client, it will encourage them to think about their answers again or to provide further information. So I'm just going to double check a few questions. Have any of your tax credits ever been disallowed by the IRS? That's normally when the IRS mails someone a letter just asking for more information to support the tax credits that were received. Sometimes they ask for a repayment based on the tax credits that you did get and probably shouldn't have.
Oh no, nothing like that.
Okay. So you indicated yes, that you received the first-time home buyer's credit in 2008. That would mean that you purchased the home and received the tax credit in the tax year 2008.
Oh, sorry, I think I answered that question incorrectly. I don't own a home.
Okay, so I'm going to change that answer. And then the final thing is, did you receive a letter from the IRS at any time this year?
You know, I did get a letter, but it was about a previous year. Do you think that matters?
Well, to be safe, if you have the letter with you, I'd like to add it with your tax documents so we can have someone just look at it more thoroughly.
Okay.
In the healthcare coverage section, we are trying to find out if the household had health insurance anytime throughout the year. If they did, we want to know if this health insurance was marketplace insurance. If anyone in the household had health insurance through the marketplace, then we must include the form 1095A in the tax return. If the tax return is prepared and submitted to the IRS without the health insurance form, the IRS will not release the refund to the client until the form 1095A is included in the tax return. If the client provides other forms, such as a 1095B or a 1095C, then include it with the pile of documents. But if they don't have these forms, then it's fine to not include them. So you marked that you had health insurance. You and the children, did you have insurance all year?
Almost the whole year.
Okay. What part of the year were you not covered?
Just January.
And that's for all three of you?
Yes.
Was your coverage through your employer?
It was, yes.
And is that for the children as well?
So I had insurance through my employer, but both of my kids had CHIP.
I just made the notes here for the tax preparer. Okay, great. We have finally arrived at the last section of the intake sheet. This is the only section where the client may change their answers to the questions at any time. Even though they can change their mind, make sure these questions have been answered. They should not be left blank. As a rule of thumb, we prefer no fields in the intake sheet to be left blank, and instead for you to use not applicable or NA for questions that don't necessarily have an answer. This lets the tax preparer know that the question has been discussed with the client. Use the additional comments section to write any information that you think will help with the tax preparation. Even if you are not sure if the information is needed, go ahead and make the note. Now that we are done reviewing the intake sheet, you must now prepare all of the paperwork for the tax preparer. At each intake station, you will have a stack of large white envelopes. The first envelope is what we call the client envelope. The second envelope is the processing envelope and is for internal use only. So these should never go home with the client, even if you think that they may be right back. Grab a client envelope and write the client's name and the tax year on it on the side of the client's preferred language. On the client envelope, highlight the phone number for the tax centers. We want the client to be able to reach us at any time during the year. Place the pile of tax documents inside this envelope. Hand the client envelope back to the client and let the client know that all of the required documents are inside this envelope. Now we need to create a processing envelope for the client. This envelope is used internally and will serve as a placeholder until the client is called by the tax preparer. The processing envelope gives the tax preparer information on the tax return. When completing the processing envelope, only fill out the following fields: the client's arrival. When using a paper sign-in, you will enter the page number, a dash, and the number of the line the client signed in on. For example, if a client is the third person listed on the second page of the sign-in sheet, then you would write 2-3. The primary taxpayer's name as written on the Social Security card or I-10 letter. The spouse's name should not be written on the processing envelope. You would write the tax year. If a client needs multiple tax years prepared, then we create one processing envelope per tax year. Your tax site code, today's date, and enter your volunteer ID in the liaison ID area. The certification level of the tax return. To determine the certification level of the tax return, look at the intake sheet. each question has a letter code printed before the question. The letter code lets us know what certification level is needed to prepare the tax return. B is for basic, A for advanced, and M for military certification. These letter codes indicate which certifications are required to complete the tax return and can stand alone. There is also letter code HSA, which stands for Health Savings Account. This letter code cannot stand alone and must be paired with a basic, advanced, or military tax certification. Find the yes question with the highest level of certification. This will indicate the required certification level for the tax return. And finally, fill out the intake notes section on the processing envelope with any relevant information the tax preparer needs to know. Once the processing envelope is complete, place the envelope in the queue in the order the client signed in. We serve clients in the order they arrive, so if the intake interview took a bit longer than anticipated, you would still place the client in line based on when they signed in. There are exceptions to this rule, such as appointments and clients with a green return visit slip. Please follow the instructions printed on the return visit slip to navigate the placement of the processing envelope. Finally, inform your client that they are done with the intake interview. I would also advise for you to remind the client of any paperwork they may still need to complete. As a courtesy, we ask that you explain to the client what to expect next in the tax preparation process. Okay, so we're all done with the intake interview. It looks like you're ready to go. I'm going to put you in line for a tax preparer. The very next advanced certified tax preparer will come and select your envelope, and they'll call you from the waiting area. While you're waiting, please don't forget to complete the self-employment form. That must be completed before the tax preparer comes and calls your name. Did you tell me that you brought your banking information?
I do on the bank's app. Is that okay?
It is, but if you can have that ready to go for the tax preparer.
Okay.
Any last questions?
Yeah, I actually just want to run to the car to grab my charger. Is that okay?
It sure is. Feel free to go on out, but please return promptly. We don't want to miss your place in line.
Okay.